In darkness I lingered mid doubt and despair. Since bondage long held me a captive to care. But Jesus delivered my soul from its chains. His precious blood cleansed me from sin's guilty stains. The world and its pleasures did tempt me to stray. I saw not the danger that lurked on the way. The toils closed around me, I knew no release. But Jesus has found me and given me his peace. Get right with God, his pardon is free. Get right with God, he's waiting for thee. Our Jesus is calling, oh come unto me. Take him, O sinner, and get right with God.
Hello, hello. Hope all is well. I just couldn't help but to share this sentiment. And I have to say this lovingly because it's something that I hear a lot. And I just think I should address it prayerfully. I did thought about it, and I meditated upon it, and I prayed about it, and I thought it should be addressed. Um, First and foremost, let's start with the Bible. First and foremost, let's start with this passage. And we tend to cherry pick the Bible, and as Adventists, we tend to cherry pick even the spirit of prophecy and take things out of context. We also tend to cherry pick Christ himself, where he demonstrated all things. Jesus Christ himself, he said in John chapter 14, verse 6, I am the way, the truth, and the life, right? And we also tend to overlook, we always, it's so popular to teach this where, Christ was merciful. Yes, we agree. Christ was loving, tender. Yes, we agree. Christ rebuked with tears in his voice. Yes, we all agree on that. He was a medical missionary. He demonstrated healing and had compassion on people. Yes, I wholeheartedly agree. And when Christ says he is the way, the truth, and the life, we need to follow in his footsteps. He did all those things. But for some reason, we tend to overlook the times when he sternly rebuked. And not just he rebuked publicly. Let's see a demonstration of that. In Matthew chapter 23, we should see starting from verse 5, from verse 5 to even verse 39. Okay? And this is a long one because Christ denounced hypocrisy. He went there with Christ. He was love, but he has zero tolerance for hypocrisy, especially in leadership. And these Pharisees were leaders. They were blind leaders. And he gave all the woes, woes, woes. And I hear often amongst our people as Seventh-day Adventists where if a faithful SDA watchman points out the sins, as in the Bible we see the sins of Israel were pointed out in their day. There's so many examples of this, friends. Even in the account of Isaiah 58, verse 1, where it says, cry aloud and spare not. And let's actually go there before I get to Matthew 23. It's in the Bible. So Isaiah 58, verse 1, it says, so in Isaiah 58, verse 1, it says, cry aloud and spare not. Does it say gentle or speak softly and spare not? No, it says cry aloud and spare not. Then it says, lift up thy voice like a trumpet. Now, when you think of trumpet, a trumpet gives a certain sound. It's not soft, it's not tender. A trumpet is loud, okay? Then it says, and show my people their transgression. Show, when you're showing somebody something, right? Their transgression, you're exposing what they're doing wrong. Oftentimes I hear, oh, we shouldn't criticize, and they give spirit prophecy quotes that are out of context to favor their disposition or to favor their sentiments. But the same Bible that we all read says, show my people their transgression and the house of Jacob their sins. So God has his faithful people, even in Israel. But the Israelites were God's chosen people, right? They were supposed to be chosen. The purpose of them, their being, was to be a light to the Gentiles, to be a light to Jews and Gentiles alike, right? So if we apply to today's terms, spiritual Israel, right? We as a people, God's people that he has chosen to bear the message to the world, to the Gentiles, to those who don't know Christ, we're supposed to be a light, right? And so in Isaiah 58, and it continues on, this is talking about God's people, friends. Isaiah 58 is all about God's people. From verse 1 to 9, verse 1 to 14, he talks about, and if you continue on chapter 58 of Isaiah, it talks about God's way of fasting versus the people, the Israelites, how they fasted in their day. You know, it talks about losing the bands of wickedness in verse 6, dealing our bread to the hungry, bringing the poor that are cast out. This is mercy. But not only God's a God of mercy, he's a God of justice. He's a God of righteousness and purity. Now, going back to Matthew 23, in verse 1, it says that then spake Jesus to the multitude and to the disciples. So let's quickly analyze some of these words. Now, people often overlook this. They say, oh, Christ was gentle and everything like that. He was, yes, we agree he was gentle. Yes, he was tender. He had compassion for the multitudes. He had compassion for those whom he died for. We are 100% in agreement with that. But we tend to overlook the words of Christ found here. And we have to ask ourselves, this sounds harsh. We tend to attack faithful watchmen who are pointing out apostasy and checking apostasy. We tend to overlook that. But let's take a look in Christ in his day. So let's go back to Christ. Since we all say and proclaim that we need to be like Christ, well, here's a dose of that. And there's many examples, but I'm just giving you one passage, one chapter here. It says, verse 3, all therefore whatsoever they bid you observe, that observe and do, but do not ye after their works, for they say and do not. This is hypocrisy. So if the minister or if our manual says we should hold on to the biblical principles or everything that we profess to believe, but the leaders don't do what they're professing and what our message is supposed to be conveying, that's hypocrisy, friends. Okay? Verse 4, for they bind heavy burdens on grievous to be borne and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves will not move them with one of their fingers. Okay? And so that's an example of the Pharisees and the scribes who were religious leaders in Christ's day. Christ was a watchman right here. He was a faithful watchman. He's warning. And don't forget, in verse 1, it starts off, then spake Jesus to the multitude and to the disciples. Oh, wait, he's speaking publicly. He is rebuking publicly, right? So in modern day terms, if we see watchmen addressing public sins of our leaders, this is often viewed as, oh, they're being cruel or they're critiquing or they're criticizing. But doesn't say in the same Bible that we read in Matthew 23 verse 1, then spake Jesus to the multitude. But we tend to overlook that verse. He spake to the multitude and to his disciples. So he not only spoke to the multitude, everybody, for all to see. He also spoke to his disciples, those who follow him. So, how can we apply it to today's terms? A faithful watchman will address the apostasy of our leaders in the church, okay, our last day remnant church who profess to be the remnant of and who profess to be the Adventists awaiting for the return of Christ. Christ addressed their hypocrisy of these leaders to the multitudes and to the disciples, two groups here. So we have the world. So if you put today's terms, let's use YouTube, for example. You see a faithful watchman addressing the apostasy of our leaders for all to see and to hear because it's public. Public sins have to be publicly addressed. Now, if it's private, that's different. But we see here in this account, the Pharisees, what they were doing was public. Jesus addressed their public sins because what they were doing, if you read the Gospels, you will see that what the Pharisees were doing were all public sins. They were hypocrites. So let's go to verse 5. But all, Jesus continued, these are the words of Jesus, not my words. But all their works that they do for to be seen of men, they make broad their phylacteries and enlarge the borders of their garments, and love the uppermost rooms of feasts and the chief seats in the synagogues, and greetings in the markets, and to be called of men, Rabbi, Rabbi. Does that sound familiar? If we apply it to today's terms, sadly, not all, we're not judging all, but there are some ministers, just because they have titles next to their name when they study theology, they like to be called by their title. Do we see this today, friends? Let's continue. Verse 8, but be not ye called rabbi, for one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. So we should be humble, friends. No matter how many titles you have beside your name, we are all on the same level. Okay? Verse 9, and call no man your father which upon the earth, for one is your Father which is in heaven. We know who calls himself Father, and that's the Pope, right? He's addressing not only the Pharisees, he's addressing, other false leaders, if you will. Let's continue. In verse 10, neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. Interesting. Even though in degrees we see Master of Divinity. Master of Divinity. Interesting. But I'm not going to go there. That's another topic by itself. But he says here, neither be ye called masters, for one is your master, even Christ. So the only master we should call is Christ and no one else. Okay? And let's continue. Verse 11. But he that is greatest among you shall be your servant. Not common. How often there are some pastors who, because they're a pastor, they think just preaching at the pulpit is their job. It's like a clock in, clock out job. No, friends, it's much more deeper than that. And if you're acquainted with the Testimonies, volume 1 to 9, which you're encouraged to read as a people, is that it's a lot deeper than just preaching at the pulpit. The work just begins there. Spirit of Prophecy talks about. It goes deeper. They go out and visit homes. They really go out. They go all out for the salvation of souls. Just exactly what Christ did. He went and healed. How many of our ministers actually know about the health message? How many actually practice it? Let alone how many are medical missionaries? That's just a thought. Then it continues. Verse 12, and whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Now here's verse 13. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites. Strong words there. Not too gentle, isn't it? For ye shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. Ooh. He's telling them that they shut up the kingdom against men. He's saying that these leaders, these hypocrites, are causing people to lose their salvation because of their influence. And then it says, for ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer them that are entering to go in. Verse 14, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer, therefore ye shall receive the greater damnation. Oh, how often in prayer meeting do we make these long prayers, right? Christ talks about that. Just to be shown that we're pious. Christ condemns that. Verse 15. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he is made, for ye make him twofold more the child of hell than yourselves. Oh, it just goes deeper. Verse 16. Woe unto you, ye blind guides, which say, whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing, but whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater the gold or the temple that sanctifieth the gold? That's another story altogether. Materialism, glorifying the things that are in the church building than the one who is the creator of all things, right? Verse 18. And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing, but whosoever sweareth by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater the gift or the altar that sanctifieth the gift? Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar sweareth by it, and be by all things thereon. Verse 21. And whoso shall swear by the temple sweareth by it, and by him that dwelleth therein. How do we swear? How do we blaspheme? In his temple. The way we carry ourselves at church. That's just another topic, friends. Do we actually respect God in his sanctuary? We're swearing. We're blaspheming his name, his character, the way we carry ourselves at church, carrying conversations. We're treating it as if it's a common place. People running, or children, letting the children run in the sanctuary. You won't find that in the synagogues, though. But yet we find this in the Adventist church. Okay, that's my observation. Anyway, so let's continue. It says in verse 21, no, 22, 23. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye pay the tithe of mint and anise and cumin, and have omitted the weightier matters of the law, judgment, mercy, and faith. These ought ye to have done, and not to leave the other undone. So Christ made it clear. We could have an appearance for paying our tithes and offerings. Great. Great if you pay your tithes every week. You show that you pay your tithes every week, right? But yet it says here, you have omitted, Christ says, the weightier matters of the law, which is judgment, mercy, and faith. Judgment, mercy, and faith. So mercy is important. We always talk about mercy, 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 mercy. Faith, okay, but law and judgment. Okay, law and judgment. God is a God of justice as well, friends, right? So it's verse 24. Ye blind guides, which restrain at a gnat and swallow a camel. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, for ye may clean the outside of the cup of the platter, but within they are full of extortion and excess. Extortion. Those are strong words, friends. What is an extortioner? Okay, let's look up the definition of extortioner. Extortioner. An extortioner is one who practices extortion, an extortionist. What is an extortionist? Okay, an extortionist is a criminal who extorts money from someone by threatening to expose embarrassing information about them. Okay, embarrassing information. So extortion is the practice of obtaining benefit through coercion. In most jurisdictions, it is likely to constitute a criminal offense. The bulk of this article deals with such cases. Robbery is the simplest and most common form of extortion, although making unfounded threats in order to obtain an unfair business advantage is also a form of extortion. So we understand that robbery is a form of extortion, friends. Okay, it's a form of extortion. So here it says here that within the full extortion and excess. Robbery. How do we rob God? Not only in tithes and offerings, but we rob him of his image. If we don't bear his image, we don't reflect Christ and all that entails Christ, because he says he's the way and truth and life. We are robbing God, friends. So are the leaders, if we're not following Christ and looking to him. And it says here in verse 26, thou blind Pharisee, cleanse first that which is within the cup and platter, that the outside of them may be clean also. So one can have an appearance of piety and humility and gentleness and kindness, But inside, they are extortioners, right? They're robbing God because they're not reflecting Him aright, or they are coercing others to do something that in order to benefit from them. And now it says in verse 27, woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, for ye are alike unto white sepulchres. Ooh, those are strong words. Which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones and of all uncleanness. Now, if Christ were to be here today, modern speaking, physically, or if we see like faithful watchmen doing, they don't say half the things that Christ said here, but yet they will be labeled as being mean, not having the spirit of Christ. But yet here it says, ye are like whited sepulchres, which indeed appear beautiful outward, but are within full of dead men's bones. Wow, those are strong words, don't you think? Now, verse 28, even so ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within ye are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. So we could appear pious, like I said, but we're full of iniquity and hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is one who compels others to do so or to do what is right, but you are not practicing those very things that we believe. That's hypocrisy, friends. Who likes hypocrisy? Certainly not Jesus. And iniquity. What is iniquity? Let's look it up. Iniquity. So according to definition, it says gross immorality or injustice or wickedness. A gross immoral act, a sin. So we know that sin is a transgression of God's law. God's law is His character, right? So if we're professing one thing but we're doing the opposite, that is iniquity. Verse 28. Even so, ye also outwardly appear righteous unto men, but within you are full of hypocrisy and iniquity. Verse 29. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because ye build the tombs of prophets and garnish the sepulchres of the righteous, and say, if we had been in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves that ye are the children of them which killed the prophets. Wow. Now, let me elaborate on this. Christ is saying they have this appearance of appreciative of the prophets, right? By garnishing the sepulchres and building the tombs, commemorating these prophets. But yet, these very leaders were the same ones who crucified Christ. These are the same ones, even of the forefathers, had crucified the prophets who announced Jesus is coming. So how do we apply to today's modern terms? How many of our people are attacking, for example, our prophet Ellen G. White and her writings, and cherry pick her writings to suit their beliefs or their stance, if you will? But how many also would backbite or talk or throw black balls at faithful watchmen? They too are attacking God's faithful watchmen who prophesy against the hypocrisy and the compromise that we see amongst our people, amongst our leadership. It starts with the leadership, friends, because if the leadership is blind, they're going to lead their followers into blindness as well, their members into blindness, right? Christ even talked about that. The blind, if the blind lead the blind, both will fall into a ditch, right? So it starts with the leadership. Christ made sure He addressed the leaders, just like how we laymen and faithful watchmen alike, we ought to lovingly but firmly, address the hypocrisy in our leadership. And we can't be blind to this, friends. We see it. Let's continue. So, verse 31. Wherefore ye be witnesses unto yourselves. Okay, this verse 32. Fill ye up then the measure of your fathers, ye serpents. Ooh, now the vocabulary gets stronger here. Jesus speaking. It says in verse 33, ye serpents. So you're calling these blind guides, these leaders, serpents. Ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Now, friends, if you were to apply to today's terms, often I've seen and heard ministers, Seventh-day Adventist pastors, and even some leaders of our church would write to me personally and attack and say, oh, for example, Pastor Andrew Enriquez and other faithful watchmen of the sort, that, oh, he's being mean, he's not having the spirit of Christ, and so forth. So then if you have a problem, and his vocabulary is not even half of close of what Christ is saying in these verses, because if you have a problem with him addressing what is obviously public, right, then you obviously have a problem with Christ, because here in verse 33, imagine if he were to say, these Elder Ted Wilson, you are a serpent, or just, I'll give you an example, right? Or any leader, Pastor X, Pastor Y, you serpent, you are a generation of vipers. How would you stomach that? You would say, oh, he's being mean, he doesn't have the spirit of Christ, but yet Christ, the same Christ who we profess to follow his example, right? We often say we should follow his example, and he did it right. Well, guess what? In verse 33, he says, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers. And don't forget, remember, in verse 1 of the same chapter, he is speaking to the multitude. So in front of everybody, he is saying, ye serpents, ye generation of vipers, how can ye escape the damnation of hell? Verse 34. Wherefore, behold, I send unto you prophets and wise men and scribes, and some of them ye shall kill and crucify, and some of them shall ye scourge in your synagogues and persecute them from city to city. Verse 35, that upon you may come all the righteous blood shed upon the earth, from the blood of righteous Abel unto the blood of Zacharias son of Barachias, whom you slew between the temple and the altar. Okay? Verse 36, verily I say unto you, all these things shall come upon this generation. Nothing is new under the sun, friends. Verse 37, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, thou that killest the prophets, and stonest them which are sent unto thee. How often would I have gathered thy children together, even as a hen gathereth her chicken under her wings, and ye would not. It says, and I repeat, thou killest the prophet, and stonest them which are sent unto thee. Now, we often say, some will say, oh, I don't hate so-and-so, I don't hate so-and-so. So let's take a look there. Let's have the Bible answer that. Let's go to Matthew chapter 5. Before we go to the last two verses on Matthew 23, let's go quickly to Matthew 5. I want to address this really quickly. Matthew chapter 5, now in verse 21 to 37. Okay, let's go to verse, in particular, 21, just to be precise. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of judgment. Verse 22. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment, and whosoever shall say to his brother, Raca, shall be in danger of the council, but whosoever shall say, thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Okay? So we see here clearly that when one says, oh, I don't kill, but you could hate somebody in your heart. You don't have to literally kill them, but with your words, you are killing them. And it goes further, back to chapter 23, verses 37. It says, and stoneth them which are sent unto thee. Now, how often do we stone our faithful watchmen with our words, with our judgments, throwing black balls at them? Now, for those who may not be aware what black balls are, you're encouraged to read Testimonies to the Church, Volume 1. She gives more details about that. And you don't realize this, but you're throwing black balls on God's faithful watchman who is simply checking apostasy. Now, if you love souls and if you love Jesus, then this video is obviously for you. And if you don't, and you disagree with me, that is fine. You're entitled to that. But just bear in mind that Jesus not only was loving and merciful, but he was certainly checking apostasy and compromise. And he hates hypocrisy, especially among leadership, because it starts with them. And now, verse 38, behold, your house is left unto you desolate. Now, you see, friends, because of the hypocrisy of these leaders, their house was left unto them desolate. So, my appeal to our pastors or SDA pastors who may be watching this, our leaders. I've been a Seventh day Adventist for 24 years and counting. I love this church. In fact, I've worked with many pastors and I have great relationships with them. It has not changed. I actually attend a conference SDA church. But we have to realize and come to a point where we need to work together. If we truly have one faith, one hope, one doctrine, we would actually err on the side of Christ and not only speak mercy and love, mercy, and grace, but we also have to be prayerfully courageous to check apostasy. And when we see that in our leadership, we have to address it publicly, especially if it's publicly. In verse 39, it says, for I say unto you, ye shall not see me henceforth till ye shall say, blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord. So my prayer, friends, sorry for the lengthy video, but I just thought I should really address this because it's often a misconception, and often Jesus Christ is cherry picked in some of his, I would say, characteristics and approach to things. We see here clearly in this chapter that some of the words here uttered were pretty strong words, but it's in the Bible. So what can we learn from this, friends? Truth is truth. Emotions aside, but truth and true love is a principle. It's not emotion. So may God help us to put our emotions aside, learn to work together in the spirit of Christ to check apostasy, to check a compromise, and especially to check hypocrisy. And so check apostasy, compromise, and hypocrisy. May God help us, friends. If you're new to this channel, feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And feel free to share this video far and wide. I have nothing but love for you. If you're watching this video, Pastor Ted Wilson, I've met you personally years ago. And if I were to meet you again in person, I would share these sentiments with you. Okay? We just want to be, we want you to be saved. I want to be saved. I want my pastors to be saved. All the pastors I've worked with, I want them to be saved. And these are something that as a member, a Seventh-day Adventist member in good standing, I am publicly protesting against these things that are happening within our conferences and churches. I pray that there'll be true revival. You know, every year we always have this 10-day revival and prayer, but it starts with our hearts, friends. It starts with our heart, a reformation of the heart. And when the reformation of the heart begins truly, we will be a united front and check apostasy, compromise, and hypocrisy amongst our leaders without any fear. Because in Proverbs 20, verse 1, it says, the wicked flee where no man pursueth, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. And so I say this lovingly, but also unapologetically. So God help us and help us to be ready and help us truly to repent because Jesus is coming soon and that we truly walk in his footsteps. Bye for now. I then saw a company pressing through the crowd with their eyes intently fixed upon the heavenly crown. As they earnestly urged their way through the disorderly crowd, angels attended them and made room for them to advance. As they neared the heavenly crown, the light emanating from it shone upon them and around them, dispelling their darkness and growing clearer and brighter until they seemed to be transformed and resembled the angels. They cast not one lingering look upon the earthly crown. Those who were in pursuit of the earthly mocked them and threw black balls after them. These did them no injury while their eyes were fixed upon the heavenly crown. But those who turned their attention to the black balls were stained with them
the following scripture was presented before me. Matthew 6, verse 19 to 24. Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon the earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, whether neither moth nor rust does corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. But if thine eye be evil, the whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness? No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. Then that which I had seen was explained to me as follows. The multitude who were so eagerly striving for the earthly crown were those who love this world's treasure and are deceived and flattered with its short lived attractions. Some I saw who profess to be the followers of Jesus are so ambitious to obtain earthly treasures that they lose their love for heaven, act like the world, and are counted of God as of the world. They profess to be seeking an immortal crown, a treasure in the heavens, but their interest and principal study is to acquire earthly treasures. Those who have their treasures in this world and love their riches cannot love Jesus. They may think that they are right, and although they cling to their possessions with a miser's grasp, they cannot be made to see it or to feel that they love money more than the cause of truth or the heavenly treasure.
Get right with God, His pardon is free. Get right with God, He's waiting for thee. Our Jesus is calling.